welcome to Bharata First. You're watching Big Picture with me, Frank Pereira. Since you're here, please like the video, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and share the video as well. Do subscribe to our newsletter to get some incisive content. The Bharata First team runs several quizzes. Do participate in them. If you like our content, please contribute to keep it alive. Let me also take this opportunity to inform you about Bharata First Knowledge Center, an initiative that will help each one of you in your competitive exams and transform the way you learn. Go to kc.bharatafirst.com for more details and register now. Experience a whole new way of gaining knowledge. All this information, along with some must-see recommendations, are in the description of the video. Please go through it. And now, on to the discussion. The government is expected to come out with a relief package as it plans to offer some breathing space to the ailing telecom sector, especially cash-strapped Vodafone Idea, which is on the brink of a financial collapse. While no specific date has been announced by the government for announcing the telecom relief package, several media houses have reported that work is underway to provide relief to all stressed telecom companies, especially Vodafone Idea Limited. Even as the government readies the relief package for the telecom sector, it wants promoters of Vodafone Idea, the Vodafone Group PLC and Aditya Birla Group to show their commitment to telecom operations by infusing capital. Telecommunication officials are planning to reach out to the ailing telcos promoters to understand the future course of action and whether the promoters are committed to saving the stressed entity. This is because the government wants to avoid a situation where Vodafone Idea goes under despite a relief package. In this edition of Big Picture, we will analyze the Vodafone Idea crisis. Joining me on the program today are Ajay Shankar, former Secretary, Government of India, Prasanjit Datta, editor, Prosaic View and business columnist, and Ishan Jaipuria, advocate and insolvency expert. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of Big Picture. Mr. Shankar, let me start the program with you first. Let's first try and understand and analyze this whole Vodafone Idea issue. I mean, it's not something new. It's been going on for some time now. In 2017, when the merger took place between Vodafone and Idea, there was a lot of fanfare about it, and the two companies together, when the merger took place, had about 44% of the market share in India. But today, it's a sorry story.
It's a difficult situation for the company. Its share prices have crashed by about 50% in the last year. And when the two had merged, they had felt that they may somehow be able to save themselves as a merged entity rather than struggling to survive on their own. Now, clearly that has not worked. And now you have a situation where the promoters have made it very clear that they are not prepared to put in more money, which is basically saying that no point putting in good money after, a problem. And so an international analyst has said that India now has the choice of either seeing this firm disappear, or if it feels it needs to have another player, then the government has to step in and see what it can do. So clearly, but this is something which has been building over some time, and the crisis is not unexpected or unforeseen.
Absolutely.
So when we come to the next round, we're going to good questions. We try and figure out why this has happened.
Sure.
But it is also a very good case study of the problem of unintended consequences in policy. So I will leave it at that.
Absolutely.
And unintended consequences over a period of time.
Correct. So yeah, so there's so much to look into, so much to talk about, so much to discuss, spectrum and other charges as well. We'll take that up as the program progresses. But let me get Prasanjit Datta into the picture now. As far as Vodafone and Idea is concerned, what went wrong really? What has caused all of this? A company that was doing so well in a sector which was said to be flourishing and said to be a good sector to get into, to see a company as big as this, finally reach this position. What were some of the biggest reasons, do you think?
See, the problem has been growing for a very long time. And it was not as if the government was not aware or the regulator was not aware. My personal belief is that the government sat back thinking that people will keep putting in money. We have seen the collapse of a number of global investors, Telenor and the others, who spent billions in the country and then walked away. We have seen, Reliance Corp, the Anil Ambani company, trying its level best. And at one point of time, it was very big and it was trying to merge with Aircel and all. That didn't work out. It finally went into NCLT. This is one peculiar sector where being an early bird has not helped. They spent a lot of money on building 2G, which is now an albatross around their neck. They to keep up with late entrants, they bid massively for spectrum, which has turned out to be something that is sinking them. They have got huge AGR dues, which somebody like Reliance Jio doesn't have because it is a much younger company. So I think that this was building up. The government could have taken some corrective action. One of the things is that instead of now going to Supreme Court, it could have stepped back and said that, it is not valid to take money to make a demand for non-telecom revenues in AGR. So it could have done all those things, which it didn't do. Now it is going to Supreme Court and saying that, look, that now it is almost telling the Supreme Court that bail me out of the trouble. But the fact was that it was the one which took the AGR dues to the court, right? And it fought. So if it hadn't made such an issue and had tried to sit with the, with the companies and sort it out, knowing the debt levels which would hit the government if any of them went down, the banks which would, I think they could have pretty well, they could have handled it much better if somebody had been paying attention. That's my view.
Absolutely. Ishan, let me bring you into the picture now. So we've recently, done away with the retrospective tax amendment. Now, is that going to have any kind of an implication, or will it bring about some kind of a breather to Vodafone Idea?
Yeah, Frank. So that's a very valid point. However, I believe that is more to do with rectification of what we had done earlier, rather than giving any sort of a breather to what the existing crisis is. Having said that, what my understanding of this situation is that the telecom is staring at a situation where the entire sector might be reduced to a duopoly, barring a few government companies like BSNL and MTNL, etc. Now, you see, creative destruction, in my understanding, is the ethos of any capitalist economy, which by the way is debatable capitalist economy. However, this is the fundamental ethos. So if a company goes down during its natural course, it is all right. However, the massive scale that we are dealing with in case of Vodafone, I would just want to draw your attention to a few facts. So the total debt that is owed by Vodafone is around 1.8 lakh crore, out of which around 1.5 lakh crore, and this is very interesting, 1.5 lakh crore is owed to the government of India. And the remaining around 20 to 30 odd crores, 20 to 30,000 odd crores is the exposure that the banks have taken. Now, this 30 odd crore includes funded and non-funded exposure, which could be by way of a guarantee or any letter of credit, etc. Now, the question that sort of begets us all is whether the government should enter the market and salvage a situation like this. Which brings me to the other point, is that salvaging a situation like this, wherein you have 1.5 lakh crore of debt, is very tricky, because at one hand you are fiscally relatively you are running a very tight fiscal ship, wherein you cannot afford to salvage a company of this magnitude out by literally converting the debt into equity, as has been the opinion of many experts. In fact, I recall Ajay Shankar sir just mentioning about that Deutsche report, which had said that the government should ideally be converting the debt of Vodafone into equity, which perhaps, as we all know, that this government specifically is a disinvestment happy government, which has laid out a protocol that they are in no business of doing business. In that situation, when you are trying to salvage a company through converting the debt to equity is a rather tricky situation. I would leave that eventually to be answered. So those are my initial views on this crisis.
Absolutely. Very well put. I think very well said, Dishan. Let me go across to Mr. Rajesh Shankar now. Mr. Shankar, so is there a way out? It's a difficult question, but yeah, because of the reasons that Ishan has just pointed out, is there a way out? How have the policies in the past affected or played spoil sport as far as the telecom sector is concerned? Because like pointed out by Mr. Datta, this is not just one company. There have been several telecom players that have come to India and have all collapsed. And now it looks like we are heading in a direction where we'll just have two.
See, I had said this is a problem which is intrinsic to our mindset in India, in one sense, and which is that we don't quite accept the fact, which is true in a capitalist economy, that profits are private and losses are socialized. And therefore, it is in the public interest to see that firms don't go under, and public policy at least should not be one where the probability of their going under rises. So if you look at the telecom sector and look at 25 years, in 95, we did an auction for telecom licenses and we picked up the best theoretical design from the US. We got very high bids for the licenses. And in 4 years, all the licensees were in default on their payments. They had bid too aggressively. They were losing money. Then the NDA government, under Vajpayee and Mr. Shuri, took a very radical decision and went beyond the contract and gave them relief, saying that, okay, forget your license fee, you can't pay it. We will move to revenue sharing. Now, the revenue sharing was very high and very good. And we had the great success story for over a decade. Telecom tariffs went down, consumer was very happy. Services in India became amongst the best in the world. And government was getting 30% of profits as tax and a huge amount as revenue. Then you get a CAG report about presumed losses, and there is a national hysteria. And therefore, government goes in for auction. Now, the moment you go in for auction of a limited commodity, you drive up prices sky high. So this is what happened, that the existing incumbents, to survive, bid very aggressively. And I recall a conversation with one of them or their representative saying that we'll bid very aggressively, but we'll be in deep trouble. Now you move fast forward, you have an aggressive newer entrant whose cost structure is better and has done predatory pricing or aggressive entry pricing and has given great pain to the existing incumbents. So now the Supreme Court takes a decision, which is technically and legally correct. But again, the consequence of that is that the company is in no position to pay. So at the end of the day, government as a sovereign, as a tax collector, or a bank as a lender, or a court deciding a court case, can give you a decision which can drive a company to bankruptcy. Or as a matter of public policy, you see whether that bankruptcy is in the public interest, allow it to happen, or then act well, taking a holistic view to prevent it from happening. And that means acceptance in the political and other elites in the country that businesses can pay only if they make money. Promoters will not bring in money to lose more money. And at the end of the banks lose money, it is our money as bank depositors. So we pay either as taxpayers or as bank depositors. There is no free money in the system.
Absolutely. So it's highly complex. It's highly difficult as well, isn't it?
Which is why policy making is not so easy sometimes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, let me take the discussion forward then. Prasenjit Datta, let's talk about this aspect of duopoly. And do you believe that in all likelihood we are heading into duopoly as far as the telecom sector is concerned? What does it mean for the consumer too?
See, it is already bad for the consumer. We have started seeing prices rising in EDC. Reliance Jio prices are no longer what they were when they entered. They gave 2 years of free, voice and certain amount of data. That's gone. Airtel is moving prices. Now you can go to the competition commission saying that they are all raising their prices in EDC. It doesn't work because they will say that our cost structures have changed and we will have to survive. So I think the duopoly is a terrible idea. And the ideal, and as Mr. Shankar had pointed out, the ideal was those 10 years when we had roughly 6 players. Then we had a situation where the next round of licensing, which created the controversy because of the way that it was done, plus the CAG report, which created a national hysteria, that brought in 13 players. At that time, nobody was making money because everybody, with 13 players, there's no market in the country which will. When you had 6 players, about 3 to 4 of them were making decent money. And there were a couple of them who were hoping to make money or just about breaking it. So we have moved from that situation to 2 guys, out of which one person has deep pockets. Other person will survive by virtue of the fact that they have been operationally profitable and they have got Africa operation which is making money and to a certain extent is subsidizing the Indian operations. So, and once Vodafone goes, they will certainly pick up a certain amount of the people, and the ARPUs will rise, and so they will do well. But as far as the consumer is concerned, it is terrible because you have 2 players. Neither of them will be interested in improving services. Neither of them will be giving things cheap, and we will be moving towards a fairly high-cost telecom structure. So it's from my point of view, it's a very bad news. But there's no way of saving VI also. Vodafone Idea is not likely to be saved because there are problems. That if the government steps in to save Vodafone Idea, there is nothing preventing Anil Ambani or any of the previous incumbents who went down from saying that why are you trying to save that company and why did you not? And we will be tied up in litigation for years together.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's highly complex, and it looks like the consumer is going to bear the brunt of this all. Ishan, coming to you now, talking about this aspect and taking it forward, considering how the telecom sector and how things have played out in the telecom sector over the last few years, will this collapse just end with Vodafone and Idea, or will this go further? Now, that's something that we need to look at as well. And also, yes, this government has said that the government should not be in the business of doing business, but there are 1.3 billion people in India who have realized what using data or cheap data is like, and they are going to, I have a sense that, at some point in time, people are going to start asking questions about why they cannot view something on the internet or why they cannot get data at that cost. Do you see this playing out at some point in time and the government having to be forced to step in and intervene?
So that's a very valid point, Frank. In fact, with the whole Digital India initiative, it is only incumbent on the governments, subsequent governments as well, to sort of ensure a level playing field in the telecom sector, which also has to merge well with the idea of a digital India, right? However, coming back to your question as to how to salvage a situation like this, and would it be a good idea to sort of be reduced to a duopoly in a market which earlier used to be of a 13 plus 1 or 2 market. So my understanding here is Frank, if you could please repeat the last bit of your question.
No, I was just generally trying to understand, is it going to stop? Is this collapse going to stop at Vodafone Idea, or are we going to see anything going further than that? Because, predatory pricing can go on to be a to be one company thing too.
Exactly. So see, we have already been effectively reduced to a duopoly. Now, going forward, if it is going to, whether it is going to sort of convert itself into a monopoly is a matter of time. And to comment on this right now would slightly be premature for me to be saying that because of all the predatory pricing. Because what we understand right now is that Jio is a very new entrant, and because of the fact that it is such a new entrant, it does not have any of the baggages that other telecom companies had. For example, let us talk about the most contentious issue, which is the AGR dues. Now, Vodafone itself accounts for about 60 crore of AGR, 58,000 crore of AGR dues. Now, that baggage is not with Jio. So definitely it has a wonderful head start. And it has entered a market at such a point in time where the existing players were already sort of facing issues because of the AGR dues, and further these issues were exacerbated because of the predatory pricing that was so to say predatory pricing that was put in by one of the players in the market. Now, duopoly being reduced to monopoly is obviously something which cannot be sort of conjectured at this point in time. However, a very valid point was made by Prasenjit sir, wherein he said that a bankruptcy of these companies. We have already seen Aircel getting into bankruptcy. We have seen other telecom players getting into bankruptcy. So could bankruptcy be a potential salvage option for Vodafone? And why do I use the word salvage? So I've used the word salvage very cautiously, because generally, if a company is going bankrupt, it is to say that there's nothing remains of the company. However, under the new insolvency and bankruptcy code, I would just want you to I would just want to draw your attention to the new insolvency and bankruptcy code, which has an entire different mindset which has come up with a different mindset. The idea is to resolve a company out of distress rather than just recovering the money that is owed to the government or to the other players. So if the company voluntarily or involuntarily, there are two processes. Either a financial creditor, that is to say a bank or a financial institution, can trigger an insolvency application. However, for that, the prerequisite is a default, which fortunately as of now has not occurred in Vodafone Idea's case. And the second option is for them to voluntarily enter into bankruptcy and say, "Ki boss, I have it is really difficult for me to run as a going concern," and then a RP would be appointed, and now the RP will have to salvage the entire situation. Now, in both these cases, the silver lining, in my understanding, would be that a new resolution applicant would come in to salvage the situation. So in that case, the government does not have to sort of fiscally provide for such bailouts. A new resolution applicant, which could be either an Indian entity or a foreign entity, could come in, bid for Vodafone Idea, and then salvage the situation. And Vodafone Idea, if I might say so, is not as bad an asset as it is projected to be in recently, because I would just want to draw your attention to the fact that there are around 27 crore subscribers that Vodafone still holds. Vodafone Idea still holds. And it has a lot of infrastructure in place, which any new company with, obviously the new company has to have a deep pocket in order to salvage a company out like this. And it has to have it has to come in to India with for a longer period of time to sort of salvage the situation. But this is one point where I could sort of draw the silver line, as it were. So those are my 2 cents.
Sure, points taken. All right, time to get quick closing comments now from all my panelists with the best way forward. Starting first with you, Mr. Shankar.
Let me react to the last comment. You see, 1.5 lakh crores roughly are dues to government. That is the real problem, and that won't go away with going through IBC route. The debt to banks is manageable. So for a newcomer to find the business case for taking over Vodafone is not easy, because the business case doesn't really exist. Because Vodafone themselves have gone all over the world trying to get investment, and they haven't succeeded. Because the debt is to government, is 1.5 lakh crores, so banks is 30,000-40,000 crores, which they can manage because they're operationally okay and as a strong company. So basically, government has a tough call to take in terms of policy. And I mean, one extreme view would be, and which has emerged often enough in the media, that we take a call on these dues to government and say we'll give you a 4 or 5 year moratorium, you pay the rest over 40, 50 years or whatever, in the way the banks have very often in the old days done debt restructuring. And there is a precedent for that in terms of what was done by NDA under Mr. Vajpayee and Arun Shuri, that you found a softer, viable way forward. But whether the government would like to invest the political capital it has in taking this kind of decision and being able to, take the system along with it, it's a question it has to ask itself.
Absolutely.
The other option is that it allows it to disappear, and we have the third option, which the Deutsche Bank paper says, convert debt into equity, is more problematic, as was pointed out by the other panelists, because there are others who've gone under and government did not give them that option. So government has difficult choices. So let's see how they think about it and how they proceed.
Yes, no easy choices. All three choices seem extremely difficult at this point in time. Let's see what happens and how this is actually played out. Prasenjit Datta, best way forward.
See, the best way forward would be to re-examine the AGR dues. I think there's a valid case that non-telecom dues can be kept out. Look at it, the difference between what Vodafone says is the AGR dues that they owe and what the government says is huge. Government is saying that it owns about, VI owes about 58,000 crores. VI's own calculation is 21,000 crores. If they come to a negotiated understanding, which is even a halfway house, and say that, okay, it's not 21,000 crores, you pay 30,000 crores, and we will keep talking about the rest of it and decide that one way or the other what it is. I think that the two promoters can be persuaded to back the operations. Regarding spectrum, I think there is nothing that can be done now legally since the auctions have actually taken place. What the government can do is that for future policy, they can look at giving spectrum, going back to that old format which Mr. Vajpayee's government had done, which is say that in future spectrum, since there are only 3 players, in future spectrum will be at a specific license fee, which is reasonable, and not through an auction where everybody is overbidding and there's a just to try and, which keeps driving the prices up. But that can be a future stuff, provided it shows all the 3 players of this. I think that there will be a solution here. Banks will be more than happy to, renegotiate their stuff. They have only about 25,000 dues, 25,000 crore worth of dues. They would be happy to say that we can, we will do some sort of debt restructuring and give you a longer time to pay. IBC is not a solution in my opinion, because there is a particular problem which came up in the Reliance Com issue. Reliance, nobody wanted to see anybody who bid for Reliance Com. The government said that first you pay the dues, spectrum dues and AGR dues that Reliance Com has before you can bid for anything. And nobody is going to take that liability going forward. So therefore, the bidders just vanished. Even somebody like Reliance Industries, Jio, with all its deep pockets, it didn't come in to buy Reliance Com because they didn't want to pay the old dues. That is the problem.
Absolutely. And Ishan, close the show for us with your quick closing remarks.
So if you just allow me one more minute, I would want to respond to Ajay Shankar sir. So
sure, please.
On the point that sir made. So I would just want to bring the fact on record that under the insolvency code, the government is a statutory due holder. So they come 5th in the liquidation waterfall. So it is not that the debt that is owed to the government is outside the bankruptcy code. It is therefore dealt in the bankruptcy. It is therefore liable to be dealt under the bankruptcy code. However, the point that Prasenjit sir made is that I believe he is referring to the 13th April NCLAT order, wherein it is Union of India versus Vijay Kumar Iyer, wherein the NCLAT had very prudently sort of opined that any spectrum dues or AGR dues that are owed to the government have to be paid in full before any resolution can take place. So that essentially is a very interesting question that has been thrown up, because earlier you could sort of wipe out the entire debt of the government by just by ensuring the liquidation value as has been provided under the code. But now what the judgment has effectively done is it has created an artificial priority for the government. So the government dues need to be paid in full. So in effect, what Shankar sir had said is correct, that it has to be sort of taken care of. Now, my closing comments on the way forward for the telecom sector. So none of us here disagree with the fact that it is a sorry state of affairs. We are reduced from 14 telecom companies to effectively a duopoly. Now, my understanding is the buck should stop with the government, be it a disinvestment happy government or a disinvestment prudent government. My understanding is with 27 crore subscribers and with around 10,000 employees on roll and a lot more who are directly or indirectly affected by a company like this going under, the entire situation really demands the attention of any government which is in power. So
Absolutely. Right. So we'll have to leave to that, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. Well, what's coming out of this discussion is that the Vodafone Idea crisis is a good case study for what should and shouldn't be done from a policy perspective. What's happening in the telecom sector should be a wake-up call for all the stakeholders. We had 14 telecom players at one point in time. We are now practically reduced to just 2. There are 4 options before us. Number 1, let the company crash and burn. Number 2, convert debt into equity, but this may not be acceptable to the players that have already folded. Number 3, the government bails out the company by giving a moratorium of 4 to 5 years and then restructuring the dues and paying it back over a period of 40 to 50 years. And number 4, the IBC route, which seems difficult as the highest debt is to the government, which is close to about 1.5 lakh crore rupees. So it's the government who has to decide whether it wants to take that route or not and give up on all of this money. So the government has a tough call to make, as it will be 25 crore subscribers and 10,000 employees who will suffer the most. So it's a tightrope walk for the government and a tough call needs to be taken. Now, before I go, once again, let me remind you to like the video, subscribe, hit the bell icon and share the video as well. Do subscribe to our newsletter to get some incisive content. The Bharata First team runs several quizzes. Participate in them. If you like our content, please contribute to keep it alive. Let me also take this opportunity to inform you about Bharata First Knowledge Center, an initiative that will help each one of you in your competitive exams and transform the way you learn. Ensure that you go to kc.bharatafirst.com for more details and register now. Experience a whole new way of gaining knowledge. All this information along with some must-see recommendations are in the description of the video. Please go through it. That's it from me. See you again next time.